Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we're taking a look at It Follows, a horror feature from all the way back in 2014. Fantastic way to slide into October. In my opinion, I'd never seen it. Andy's a big fan. We'll talk about that at the end of the show. Stick around for the It Follows review. It's good stuff. We're also going to talk about No One Will Save You, this itty-bitty indie horror that came out just a few weeks ago on Hulu. Got a ton of praise, which I think nobody expected. Stephen King tweeted about it. Guillermo del Toro heaped praise on it. So Andy and I checked it out. We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about Aquaman 2 and just a little bit of drama that might have dropped this morning. If you're on film Twitter or just keep up with film at all, I'm sure your algorithm has thrown you some stuff about Jason Momoa being hammered on set and Amber Heard having a terrible time. We got the details. We're going to talk about all of it in our Death of Cinema segment. Before we get to all of that, we need to talk about the news. Our first story this week, Andy, Taylor Swift is going to put out like the highest grossing film of the year, I think. And I don't know if box offices are ready for it. Apparently, tickets for Taylor's Eras Tour film tour has surpassed over $100 million in advance ticket sales. That's advance. That's sold ahead of time. That's not how movies work normally. Like, this is insane.
Yeah, it's nuts, and it's kind of saving the fall movie-going slate, but at the same time, none of the studios are getting any money from this. It's because of the strike, and Taylor Swift, her representatives worked out a deal directly with the distributors at AMC and the other chains, so the studios have just been left out in the cold. But this is massive. Although I did see something today saying they don't think it's going to have a lot of staying power, so they think that, while there's already 100 million in pre-sales, they think it'll kind of peter out around 250, maybe 300 million. But we'll see. I think this will have a lot of staying power. I think there's people that will go, kind of like Barbie, will just keep going back for 2 or 3 more showings.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, I think it's going to have more staying power than they predict. Yeah, because I think people are going to go back. One, it's long. It's a long feature. I think it's like 3 hours, right? Like, it's
almost just shy of it.
Yeah, it's the whole concert. And this is like a concert tour that already is sold out around the country. Like, tickets are going for insane prices. So being able to see that basically in full, in HD, with sweeping camera views, like, it's not cutting music. Like, I think it's supposed to all be there. So as far as I'm concerned, I would expect those sales to perpetuate a bit like the concert has, but nobody knows for sure. Nobody certainly expected numbers like this, and I think AMC's really excited about it. They've already announced they've got Beyonce has a Renaissance film coming out that's going to be just in this format. They're already working with other artists. They are very excited to be able to hang on to this kite, right? Grab it by the tail and fly away. Of course, also Taylor Swift. Swift fans are stoked. AMC is reporting that they are not going to be telling people to be quiet in their theaters. They want you to get up and sing and dance. So don't go to AMC the week this comes out because you don't want to be in the theater next to this. Else.
Yeah,
God, it's going to be like a sound grenade in there. But obviously, huge. What does this mean for concert movies in the future? Because this is the biggest one ever. Nothing's ever done numbers like this.
Yeah, well, we're already seeing a big copycat happened with, like you said, Beyonce's is now going to do a concert film called Renaissance, which comes out December 1st. It looks like these things are kind of easy to put together, or they can put it together pretty quickly, because that was just announced like a few weeks after the Eras Tour concert film is. So I think we're definitely going to see more of things like this from big artists, but it's kind of troubling that this is what's getting people in seats and the actual movies are not. Because October has been a struggle. Like, all the new releases, struggling. The Creator, struggling. Saw X, Saw 10. We're going to talk about Exorcist Believer here in a second. Like, and it's not looking good. And like I said, everything got out of the way. There are no new film releases this week because everyone was getting out of Taylor Swift's way.
I am a little concerned about how this might tilt the scale, like as far as like proper film releases go, because concert films suddenly having a big boom is an exciting thing for an industry that's very hungry to make money, right? Like AMC is so stoked that they're attached to this. Cinemark's bummed that they are not getting a piece. I mean, they are in like, ticket returns, but like AMC fundamentally produced this. So they are getting the lion's share as far as distribution is concerned. One thing's for sure, it is going to be really funny if this movie does great, which it seems like it's gonna, Beyonce's movie does really well, which it seems like it's gonna, and then we're gonna get like the slow trickle of slowly like worse and worse artists down the line as these movies continue to make less money until it peters out. Kind of like Aerosmith doing Guitar Hero, and then they did like Beatles Rock Band, right? Like, I think it's going to perpetuate for a while, but then it's going to get sad and like just going to start making less money, and soon they'll just be Fathom events again. That's my hot prediction. And I know we're not really in the prediction game here on off script, but I just don't see this lasting. But for now, it is going to be an incredibly bright burn, and I'm really excited to see what it does for the box office and what it does for movies. Like, people going to a movie theater is not a bad thing, even if it's for a concert. I'm a fan. I think it's going to be cool.
Yeah, it must be really interesting if you work in this industry, and like, because Thursday, I think probably Thursday night previews are when it starts, and then Friday, and like you're watching those numbers, like when the morning news drops, you're trying to see how many, what are the numbers like on Thursday morning, on Friday morning, and then of course Saturday morning is kind of the big predictor. I think it's going to be huge. I mean, they're talking about probably like $150 million opening, which is just nuts.
Yeah, keep it on off script for more. We will totally be covering this. I don't think we're going to watch it just because Andy and I are not particularly Swifties, but mad respect.
It's also not a movie.
It's also, all right. Okay, hold on now. Anything can be filmed, Andy. Anything can be filmed. No, I respect that opinion. Speaking of things from the past coming back to the future, that's the worst segue I think I've ever done on this show. George Miller's Furiosa eyes a Cannes 2024 premiere 9 years after Fury Road wowed the fest. Yes, the sequel to Fury Road is nigh upon us, and we're very excited to see it. Andy, what do you know about this?
Man, I just about lost my mind when I saw this headline. I love Mad Max Fury Road. It was my second favorite film of the 21 teens decade. Love this movie and been really excited for this prequel to Fury Road that is coming out. And so Cannes, if you don't know, is in May. So May 2024, we will get to return to the world of Mad Max and see this. And of course, Anya Taylor-Joy is going to be playing young Furiosa. We have no details on, story, or we haven't seen anything, no posters, nothing. But if it comes out, if it's premiering in May, we're going to start seeing stills and posters kind of in the spring. So it's a pretty exciting time, and I can't believe we're less than 9 months away from a new Fury Road.
Yeah, Miller blew up on the scene with Fury Road in 2015. If you didn't see it, it was quite a large deal. People were really into it. And since then, he's done 3,000 Years of Longing in 2022. We covered that on this show. We also covered Fury Road, the black and white or black and chrome edition, but notably the production of Fury Road was very, very messy. There's a book about it called Blood, Sweat, and Chrome. It was kind of a nightmare the way that movie came together, and nobody thought that George Miller, who had originally done Mad Max and Beyond Thunderdome, and obviously done that a long time ago, I don't think anybody really thought he had the gumption to produce what Fury Road would end up being, this like visceral action feature road movie. So I think people are very interested in what Furiosa is going to be, if anything, because 3,000 Years of Longing was also not what people expected and was very imaginative and very thoughtful. We kind of liked it on the show, but I think it's divisive. So whatever this is going to be, people are stoked for it. It's also going to star Chris Hemsworth in a villain role, according to Variety. And Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa.
I don't think he's a Morton Joe. But he's a different villain. But
go ahead.
We will be getting a young Morton Joe though in the film, I believe.
Notably Aussie, I know. So I mean, at least he fits in the world of Mad Max, right? The Australian hellscape of the desert with no water. I mean, I think you said it great. We're looking forward to it. That's kind of the bit. I don't know. Hopefully, we find out more, and we'll be reporting on it here. Any other thoughts on Furiosa?
Other than I'm just like stoked to see anything from it. Like I can't wait to see what like Anya Taylor-Joy looks like when we finally get some stills and some behind the scenes photos. It's gonna be great.
We don't often skip films on off script. We try to catch a little bit of everything that comes out, but one that we missed just recently was The Exorcist Believer, right? The new Exorcist film. Andy infamously said, "Oops, it's double trouble" in the new Exorcist movie, and turns out he might have been onto something. This movie is underperforming significantly. Just how bad is it, Andy? It turns out Exorcist Believer may not be the bang everybody thought.
Well, it's a bit of a mixed bag. So it opened to 27 million domestically, 45 million worldwide. That would be a respectable number. It only cost $30 million to make. So it's a good for that. The only problem is that Universal paid $400 million for the rights to buy it from Morgan Creek Productions. And that's the part that they're going to have to make up. So that means, and this was supposed to be part of a trilogy, so that means that each film needs to make like $200-300 million to be worth it, and this is not going to be anywhere close. In fact, it's already been announced that this is going to digital release on October 24th, like the minimum that it can be in theaters before going to digital, 17 days. You're talking about being released and going to streaming in the same month. That is terrible.
Right. A skeptic would say, oh, they're just trying to get out in front of Halloween. But like, no, it really is indicative of just how bad this is. Its sequel has already been announced, The Exorcist Deceiver, which is funny to think about because you could see how this one did. It seems like a sequel is not coming. But you don't buy the rights to 3 movies for $400 million and not end up making them, right? Not unless you're some giant studio with deep pockets like Disney. While Blumhouse obviously has been invested in a number of franchise horror projects, we're gonna have to wait and see what happens with this one. It's you know, why do you think it's doing poorly, Andy? Outside of what we haven't seen, which is maybe a poor script, or I mean, why is just nobody stoked for an Exorcist movie? Nobody cares.
So Red Letter Media they put out a review of this 45 minutes, which I did watch. And it has the same problem that a lot of the other Exorcist sequels and properties have done, is that they kind of miss the point of the original. Like the original is exploring themes of faith, loss of faith, kind of coming of age, a number of like pretty profound things. And all the stuff we know the Exorcist for, all the famous scenes, the pea soup, the swearing, the spider walk, the 360 head turn. All of those things that people just focus on that. And apparently that's what this movie does, is it focuses on like the kind of action, for lack of a better term. It's missing like the point of that original movie. And also apparently it's trying to have its cake and eat it too, where it's trying to be very inclusive, like religious wise. And it's trying to include like all these different religions in the plot. Strangely, to I guess have massive appeal, but I mean, it's kind of the whole point of The Exorcist is that it's kind of a thing of the Catholic Church, and so if you try to incorporate a bunch of other religions, but yeah, I've just heard it's kind of boring. It doesn't work. There's a bunch of plot things that are just there, so you can essentially have gross out moments. Yeah, I've just heard it's really bad.
Yeah, double the possession, half the fun is what the New York Times said of The Exorcist Believer. One more light
Brutal.
note of this before we move on to No One Will Save You. I wanted to say that Ellen Burstyn, who appears in this film, she reportedly is donating like her whole salary to, I think, the strike or some kind of charity. I don't even remember, but apparently that's the only reason she jumped into this movie. She told them, no, I'm not doing an Exorcist movie. I'm too old. I would need an absurd sum of money, and they totally paid it. So she donated the whole thing. I hope that's true. That's what I had read. Shout out to Ellen Burstyn, like a real one. Good for her. Something good coming out of this, right? But for now, we need to shift gears into something a little bit different. So this is a film we heard about. Andy and I did not really see it coming. It was a straight to streaming film. Normally we're more focused on theatrical here. But I'm excited to talk about this because it's October and it's spooky season. What better time to talk about new horror than with Hulu's No One Will Save You. So No One Will Save You is the story of Brynn Adams, I believe is her last name, who's an exiled, anxiety-ridden homebody in her small town. She lives alone. She doesn't really go into town except for groceries. She doesn't talk to anybody. She's a very quiet person. In fact, No One Will Save You is a very quiet film. There's no dialogue There's none. I mean, let me rephrase that. There's a little in the background. You might hear a radio
There's
or
like
something
five.
every once in a
There's
while.
like 5 lines.
Yeah, there's no dialogue. But in this feature of no dialogue, what you do have is a woman who lives alone who discovers one night when something goes bump that not is all right in her house, and she ultimately discovers that there is a creature that's come from the sky, an alien of sorts, that is in the house with her, and she has to use her wits and her guile to figure out how to get out of there as quickly and as quietly as possible, because as the title says, no one will save her. The movie is on Hulu. Andy, what did you think of No One Will Save You?
I didn't have to pay to see this, but I want to go find Stephen King and get my money back or my time back.
All right.
So Stephen King and a couple of other people were raving about this movie, talking about, it's really original, really captivating. And Stephen
King compared it to a Twilight Zone episode called The Invaders from 1961. He was like, it's incredible. Yeah.
But we just heard some celebrity buzz about this movie, and we're like, oh man, we got to check this out. And I'm just like, okay, Hulu wrote him a check. Someone wrote this bad a check, because I was not into this movie at all. The lack of dialogue really made it hard to pay attention. I thought it was really boring. There were some nice, I think, cinematography things, filmmaking things, which are interesting, but I was just kind of bored to tears. And I think that the performances are good. Caitlin Dever has to like carry the entire film by herself, and just and the story is told through just visuals, no dialogue. But man, I just could not get on board with it.
So I'm kind of in a similar boat. I do want to talk about what works, because there are some good elements here, and I think there's a reason it's getting buzz. I don't know if anybody got a check from Hulu, but I admittedly also did fall for the hype and was like, wow, Guillermo del Toro says this is great. King says this is great. And for what it's worth, like, I do think No One Will Save You is very much like an episodic horror feature. It's like an episode of the Twilight Zone, right? It's like an episode of Black Mirror. Like, it feels very closed off. It feels very unique. Its world feels very niche. And Brian Duffield, the director, does a lot of work to make it visually distinct. Tons of camera resets. My God, this man resets the camera for everything. Nearly everything's on a tripod. Nearly everything's locked down. Like, everything is very thoughtful in the presentation of Brynn and her house and her emotions and her feelings. But like, boy, yeah, right around like the 30-minute mark, I started to check out a little, just because I felt like I wasn't grounded and I didn't really understand my character's motivations. They just have no voice for themselves other than what's visually there. And Caitlin Dever does a great job, but it isn't enough to really carry my interest. And I think the advantage of a format like Twilight Zone or Black Mirror in being episodic is it's just a little shorter. 90 minutes of nothing as far as dialogue goes is rough, and it's visual and it's tense when it needs to be, and that stuff works good, but I just had trouble staying tuned in, and that was kind of my big problem with it. Andy, you felt a little bit harsher, I think, right? It's what do you got?
Yeah, but I'll try to stay positive, because I think there are some redeeming qualities. It was just the overall idea just doesn't work for me. The lack of dialogue. It was like watching A Quiet Place, but a lot less interesting, because at least there is occasional dialogue and big action. So starting with the story, that part of it is I couldn't get into the main story. I was much more interested in the B plot. So the main A plot is this, what is essentially an alien invasion, home invasion film. And then there's the B plot of why is she an exiled person in her community? Like there's hints of things that happened long ago. Like, no one will talk to her. No one smiles at her. Like, she is shunned. That was a much more interesting part of the movie for me. I wanted to know more about that. And we do get a little bit more of that development, but I was much more interested in that than I was the kind of alien invasion side of it. And again, it's just the lack of dialogue. So just putting that aside, that doesn't work for me. I do think it had some good elements going for it. It just needed more.
Yeah, I think it's an idea that works better on paper, which is fitting because Duffield is a writer, first and foremost, who's written some decent features. He worked on the Divergent series. He wrote Jane Got a Gun with, who was that? Natalie Portman. Underwater, which came out in 2020, that got sold to Disney through the 20th Century Fox merger, starring Kristen Stewart and TJ Miller, if you remember him. We saw that for the show. Not a bad feature. He worked on the Babysitter horror films, and he did direct one movie before this, a rom-com called Spontaneous, which he also wrote. He's a writer before he's a director, and in that way, I think this fits in with exactly the kind of stuff he's written, right? It's a bit supernatural, might have some kind of monster, horror elements, like these things I'll check out, sci-fi even. And for direction, like, it's a really solid swing at it, but it just gets clunky. Like, anytime Brynn interacts with another person, which happens a few times in the film, there's no explanation why they wouldn't speak. Like, it just feels out of place and wrong, and it just like it just feels forced and contrived to fit the formula here. I think it would have been tighter if she doesn't ever leave the house, but she does. She goes into town. She gets groceries during the film. Like, she runs errands. Like, and that's fine, but it just starts to feel a little forced. Now, when she's at home and she's alone and there's something in the house with her, that fits. That totally tracks. I get that. But the moments that aren't filling that just feel a little dry. And they're supposed to be the moments where you breathe, right? In a horror film, you got to have that back and forth where it's intense, it's really intense, then it backs off, give your audience a chance to reset. Those moments are the moments where you're going to want to get your phone out. Those are going to be the bits where you're like, I'm going to get up and get a snack. I'm going to go to the bathroom. And that just keeps you disconnected. As a streaming feature, I think it works great in the space. Had this been theatrical, I think it would have underperformed, and I think Hulu put it in the right place where it needs to be, especially considering celebrity buzz. I mean, my God, this movie's gotten some attention.
Yeah, and I think part of what doesn't work for me is it gets very repetitive, where there is like something chasing her, and she like barely gets away, and then we do that sequence several times throughout her house, like, oh, it's chasing her upstairs, she has to jump out the window, or she's downstairs, and like, it just kind of keeps changing location, but it's the same bit over and over and over. And it's just like, and because there's no dialogue, you kind of feel like you don't have to pay attention. Like, just look up when there's like when the movie gets louder.
Right. I mean, you do pay attention, but yeah, it doesn't keep you as grounded. Like, you really just aren't as interested because your brain just kind of glosses over what you're seeing. It's actually like the inverse for me of like this trick that people have discovered on TikTok to get more views. If you have crappy video, use good audio and it'll like fool your brain. That's why you see a lot of people holding up like headphone earbuds, like, and talking into the little microphone there, because the audio is so much cleaner that when you're watching it, you will stay tuned in because you can clearly understand the person who's talking to you, and it's like subtitles for your mind. You don't have any of that with No One Will Save You. And in that way, like, it's almost more experimental than it is like traditional feature. And I think that's why it's inspired some of the more experimental creators out there, right? Like Guillermo del Toro, an acclaimed monster movie director. Like, obviously, he loves the alien stuff in here. Stephen King likes odd horror. Of course, he's written it for years. He changed the game. Like, of course, he's into it. I can totally get those people endorsing it. But I think, like, that should probably come with a bit of caveat that it's, like, particularly niche. Like, this movie is definitely different in a way that I think people will either be into or won't be into. If somebody asked me about this at a house party, they'd say, hey, I watched No One Will Save You. I'd say, what'd you think? And I feel like almost every one of them would go, it's all right,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
And like, that's kind of a shame for what I thought was like really glowing praise. Maybe we were too hyped, Andy. Maybe we were too into it.
I think that's definitely part of it, but also, I mean, there was just so much buzz. There were like you said, Del Toro and Stephen King were raving about this. There was just lots of other buzz. Looked like it was like something really special, but and sometimes, you know, a streaming movie can be that. We watched a movie called Run a couple of years ago that was a straight to streaming feature. That was really, really exciting and kind of a smaller, almost Twilight Zone level episode kind of thing. And it was great. This one, not quite so much. So yeah, I think we were definitely overhyped for it.
Yeah, I do think it's an honorable mention. I think Brian Duffield's obviously going to get more directing work. I know he's got another project on IMDb upcoming. Clearly, he'll continue writing. Like, I don't think the issue is in his scripts. If anything, I think this one is just a really big dream and a really bold, like, first real outing for a director. I know he's already had one feature, but it clearly didn't get that much attention, not nearly as much as this has. I don't know. I wish I had more to say about it. I feel like it's a short review. The music in it is fine. The action in it is fine. The suspense in it is pretty good, but it comes, later in the feature like any horror feature does. And like, it takes a while to get there. And it just, I don't know. It grates on me like nails on a quiet chalkboard, I guess. Any other thoughts on this one for recommendations, Andy?
I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend No One Will Save You?
I'm going to say a pass on this, even though it's straight to streaming, and if you already have Hulu, it's available. But I just could not get into it. The lack of dialogue just made it really kind of painful to sit through. It's not very long. It's only 90 minutes, but it just felt slow in a lot of places. It gets really repetitive with some of these chase scenes that seem to kind of just happen over and over. Caitlin Dever does do a great job. She's always fine in everything she's in. So she is a highlight. And I think there's some interesting cinematography that we get to see. But it's like you said, it's like a TV episode that is just too long.
Yeah, like recommending it would be like recommending a B+. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I guess, if you're into experimental, you want something different. If you're like, I want an odd horror feature to watch, like, give it a go. You might really like it. Like, clearly it's got its fans. But No One Will Save You just didn't quite do it for me. Didn't quite hold my interest the way I think it intended to. And without really a script to comment on, without a lot of kind of the nuances of a more traditional feature, that might be its biggest offense, missing that mark because it's so clearly trying to hit it. I check it out if you're interested. I guess I don't think I'd recommend it. I think I'd probably say, being October, you go look for maybe an older horror feature, maybe something 2014, something really exciting that your co-host on a podcast recommends that we're going to talk about in just a minute with It Follows. Before we get to that, we need to talk about our middle segment here, some drama from the set of a new, exciting Warner Brothers feature. Andy, what do we call this segment?
It's time for the death of cinema. So today we're talking about some news, bombshells that just dropped. We're not a gossip channel, but there's going to be a little bit of that in wound up with some movie news. Big article came out today from Variety. Tons of drama on the set of Aquaman 2 between Jason Momoa and Amber Heard. Specifically, a lot of things about her. Where to start? So one of the things is that Heard claimed that they were trying, like Jason Momoa was trying to get her fired from the set. They didn't get along. She claims that a lot of her scenes were cut. Just real kind of ugly stuff. Apparently Elon Musk got involved at some point, sent like letters of legal threats to sue them into the ground if they didn't let Heard into the sequel. Just a lot of really bizarre stuff. Zach, what are some of your initial thoughts here?
So it's funny where all of this came from. I want to give a huge shout out to Variety for this lead line. These waters are getting choppy, which is hilarious. So all of this comes from leaked, really, I guess, public court documents from the Depp and Amber Heard trial. Most of what's here comes from an image of Amber Heard's therapist's legal pad, Dr. Dawn Hughes. Apparently she'd scribbled all this down from sessions that she did with Heard, and here we are. So you're getting like a direct dump of Amber Heard's like therapy stuff, which is wrong, and we shouldn't be reading. Like, that's not good, and like that's bad. But boy, some of these comments are so film oriented, like you can't help but want to engage with them, right? Like it's almost too good. First off, the drama between her and Johnny Depp, obviously bad stuff, right? We've covered it on the show in the past. It's probably not worth revisiting. Her opinion on Jason Momoa, the star of the film, and whether or not he was showing up intoxicated on set or dressed like her ex, which, as a brief aside, Andy and I were talking about this before the show starts, Jason Momoa and Johnny Depp basically dress the same. They do this like weird bohemian look with scarves and hats and rings on their hands and stuff. So that is a bummer that she felt like he looked similar, but what are you going to do, right? Like that's just how the man dresses. He's dressed like that in Fast X, for God's sake. Elon Musk gets involved, reportedly with a letter to Warner Brothers. Insane things happening here. Insane. And all of it, of course, is landing on DC, the studio that barely got the Flash out the door because Ezra Miller's like a confirmed criminal. Oh my God. It's so funny and terrible, of course, but it can be both tragedy and comedy, right? Like it can be sad and funny.
Right. So we have, the gossip stuff going on, but then there's some real movie news to be had here. Namely, Aquaman is supposed to come out in a couple months. It's a big December release. It is the last film of the old Walter Hamada DCEU slate of films inherited by James Gunn. And he inherited 4 films. You got to promote them. You got to put them out. This is part of that. It looks like it might do okay. Reminder, the first Aquaman is DC's highest grossing movie like ever, like over $1 billion, which is nuts. Like more than Batman, more than Superman. Like I don't know how, but it is. And this one looks like it's on track to do about. Well, we don't really know. It could have legs. It could die on on the vine. I wouldn't be surprised. I was actually a little bit excited by the trailer. Some of the bigger news out of this, though, is that it was revealed that none of the heroes from previous DCEU, so Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, none of those actors will be returning into the new DC universe. So Henry Cavill's out. We already kind of knew that, but there were rumors that Ben Affleck might return. He's out. Gal Gadot. She was told that she might come back. She's out. Ezra Miller definitely out. So it looks like they're really trying to clean house and really trying to start fresh, which I think is a really smart idea if you want to build a new universe. They are keeping some people like Viola Davis's Amanda Waller is a great character, and John Cena's Peacemaker, which is a character everyone kind of loves, and his show has been good. So they are keeping some minor characters, but the big heroes, we're going to have all new versions of that. Zach, what do you think about this, about all these people not returning?
Yesterday's Justice League, yeah, throwing them out with the trash. I think it's funny, and I think it's funny that like the only characters really sticking around are anybody who's really directly engaged in James Gunn's work, like Peacemaker. If you weren't in that, get the hell out. You know what I mean? We don't need you. Gunn's going scorched earth on this place, and it's great. And also worth mentioning, like Matt Reeves is the Batman is still happening. Joker 2 is still happening with Todd Phillips. So yeah, it's not just James Gunn for what it's worth. But it's a bummer, right? I don't know how this movie ended up doing so well. I don't know if there's any Entourage fans out there, but you might remember when Vinny Chase landed the role of Aquaman in James Cameron's new Aquaman feature in the show Entourage. I think it's like season 5 or 6. And like everybody in that show thinks it's going to be junk. Like the suit is junk. The CGI is junk. They're like, this is going to ruin your career. And then it comes out and it's a huge deal. Life imitates art. That's basically what happened. Like Aquaman came out and here we are. Like, my God, it's still happening. But now Aquaman 2 is like limping over the finish line, and there's drama, and Amber Heard says she was written out and she blames the director James Wan for part of it. The only thing I think in here that's like genuinely credible, but that I think I can really point a finger at, besides her saying her and Johnny Depp and Jason Momoa dress alike, is when she said that she felt like she was on like media blackout around the project, right? She was like, they told me I can't take photos on the set, I can't do interviews. That bit checks out because they did the exact same thing for Ezra Miller. He did no media for The Flash. He barely came to the premiere. There's like 4 photos on him, and then they ushered him inside. He didn't talk to any press. They very much are aware that they are, like, Warner Brothers is a studio that is aware that if they have a creator who's divisive, they would rather encourage them from the back seat, like, than, put them up front. They did this to J.K. Rowling, right? Like, she wasn't at the Wonderful World of Harry Potter reunited thing where all the stars and cast and crew came out for the HBO special. Like, she didn't show up for that. Why? Because she's divisive. So, like, her being blacked out, her feeling like people are against her, like, I can't help but feel like those probably seem like natural reactions to a world that feels really, effusive. And since then she's backed out, right? She moved to God, I don't remember where, the Maldives or something, and she's like chilling out and taking a break from acting, and that's probably great from her because from what I understand, she's not in much of Aquaman anyway. Um, it's kind of an ugly bummer, man. Like I'm telling you, Warner Brothers is making weird moves over there, and I can appreciate somebody like Variety can report on it when they're able.
We were saying this last year because it was about this time that it was announced that James Gunn was going to be taking over the DCEU, and we're like, oh, that's really cool. He's a great creative mind. He did Guardians, did the Peacemaker show. Like he knows how to do superhero stuff well, but he's also got to he's got to deliver 4 kind of mediocre films, and it's going to be an awkward year. And it has been, but Aquaman 2 could be successful. One of the things that's noted in the article, though, is that the first Aquaman made a lot of money from the Chinese box office, and that it's almost like that's a time gone by now. Like no one is really making money out of the Chinese audience anymore. Even big hits like Barbie and Oppenheimer didn't do near as much money as films past. The first Aquaman made $300 million from China alone, and like nothing is made even close to that in recent years. That kind of market has really shifted. So we're going to see what the numbers are. The other big piece of news in this story that's actual real film news is that it seems like Warner Brothers might possibly be sold to a larger studio, possibly Universal, which would be hilarious because that's where Chris Nolan is these days. But if not them, another entity might buy Warner Brothers, which I feel like they get bought and sold quite a bit, so it wouldn't be surprising.
I feel like I would be a little surprised. Like I know they're down bad for DC where they're at, but still Warner Brothers has a lot going on, especially considering the prevalence of Max, right? Mostly due to HBO's success. Like their success in television is nigh unmatched. I mean, their Sunday slate for the first half of 2023 was insane. Every single Sunday they had a banger on television. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. It would be, yeah, it sounds weird to me that they would be sold at this stage, but you're right. Like Warner Brothers has been bought and sold a few times. Would not be the strangest thing out there. And if anything, I'm sure Chris Nolan would be excited that he once again was ahead of the curve, but predicted before anybody else, right? Bold predictor of cinema that he would just have mosey on over to Universal before Warner Brothers drags themselves by. It's a weird story, Aquaman 2. I don't think it'll do that good. I'm hearing test screenings have not been that outstanding, and then they did reshoots in 2022. And notably, Jason Momoa blocked Amber Heard on Instagram. So I don't know.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. It's really something. A little bit of drama on the set.
That's part of that. It's so funny that's part of the news story is that they unfollowed each other on Instagram.
It's ridiculous. All right, with that, we should move into our final review of the episode. Excited to talk about this one. Bit different, bit offbeat. Andy suggested it. He's going to be taking the summary. Andy, please take it away.
It Follows. So we're going back to this film from 2014, directed and written by David Robert Mitchell. Big hit when it came out. A lot of buzz about new kind of horror. This is part of what brought on the term elevated horror. Real interesting film. He's only done one other movie after this, which is Under the Silver Lake. Really kind of bizarre follow-up. But anyways, It Follows is the story of Jay, a young woman in her kind of late teens, in a kind of ambiguous setting. We'll talk more about setting a little bit later. But Jay is out on a date with new boyfriend Hugh. Things are going well. They go to the movies. They go to the park. They get along fabulously. Eventually have relations. When Hugh reveals that he is actually given her a curse via having sex, and this curse is something is coming after you. Something is, it follows and is coming to kill you, and you can outrun it. It's not fast. It is at walking speed, but it is always coming after you, and it might look like someone you know or someone you don't know. You can't really tell them apart from other people. And so the rest of the story follows Jay and her friends and family trying to figure out how to defeat this evil, this entity that very just creepily goes towards you and at a slow pace, but you never know if they're who it is could be anyone. It's a lot of fun horror movie, quick 100 minutes, really interesting setting that we'll get into. So, Zach, what'd you think?
So I had heard about It Follows when it came out in 2014, but I didn't see it because people just said it was good. It was an indie feature and it was different. It was good. It was fine, right? And you hear about a dozen movies over the course of it, 24 movies that you hear are good, but you don't end up seeing. So it was surprising to me when out of the woodwork, probably a couple years ago, Andy discovered I hadn't seen It Follows. I was like, oh man, we got to watch that for the show. So this October, right, spooky season, I was like, hey, we should work in some horror movies. He said we should watch It Follows. We should check it out. It'll be great. Boy, I'm glad I did. This movie's really fun. This movie's super fun. And we had covered Under the Silver Lake when it came out on the show, which was really weird, but a film that is very good at making you feel out of place and kind of uncanny. And It Follows has that same energy. And it is baffling to me that David Robert Mitchell has not done anything else. He's just done those two films, really. He had a couple other shorts before then. He's done some writing. He's not working on anything else. He does have a predicted project on IMDb, but it's unconfirmed. This movie's super interesting and makes you feel weird and out of place. And it's very fitting with a character who's becoming increasingly isolated by what is fundamentally a very good movie curse, right? It's a good curse movie. You find out the rules as you go. It gets progressively more complicated. You got a big finishing act. It Follows rocks, man, and I'm really excited to talk about it. Great recommend for the show, so thanks.
All right, yeah, yeah, really glad we finally got around to seeing this. Let's start with our setting, because I think this is one of the interesting things. This movie definitely takes on a lot of the tropes that came before it. It's a nod to Halloween, the slashers of the 80s, Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. It's definitely invoking those, but it's not copying. It's just kind of taking you to a familiar place. We are in these kind of idyllic suburbs outside of Detroit in what feels like the 80s and 90s, but at the same time, like there's no internet, there's no cell phones, but one of the characters has what looks like an e-reader from today. So you have this really kind of anachronistic setting, and there's also things like I have no idea what the weather is in this movie because people are dressed for both winter and summer at the same time. Sometimes the same outfit, they'll be wearing shorts but like a big thick overcoat. So I'm like, what season is it? It looks like summer. Everything's green. There's people mowing lawns, washing their cars, but then like people are going to school at the same time. And I think what this is meant to do is just unsettle the viewer. Really creates this. It's a little bit like in The Shining. How you never get a feel for the hotel, and that's part of Kubrick disorienting the viewer, and we get that in this as well, where it's like, what time period are we in? When is it? And it's things also like the parents are kind of absentee; they're just kind of shadows on the wall. It's that kind of like the Goonies movie where the kids are super active and there's parents nowhere to be found. So we get this really fabulous setting where all this takes place.
Yeah, one of the things I thought was really neat about the presentation, because initially it's very simple. It's almost student film. Like it feels surprisingly unprofessional because a lot of the light is just really practical. It's a lot of daylight, not a lot of bounce lights, like just a lot of flat looking light with the saturation turned up for a little bit of extra color to bring out the greens and the trees and stuff. But as you start to watch it, you start to realize that like a lot of the light isn't lazy, it's unmotivated. A great example, if you're watching us on live, I got one pulled up. You can see in this like quick shot here of like a car in a parking lot. This is actually where our lead has her first interaction with kind of the thing, the curse, we'll say. This is kind of the car where things go down, and the camera pulls out from this scene to this car out in this parking lot, and like there's just this like unholy light on it. With no streetlights. Where is this light coming from? Like, is it on a crane above? Like, I don't even know how they shot it. And this is just how it looks. And this is just the movie. And there's a ton of these. Like, just keep an eye out in some scenes. You might notice, like, she'll be hiding in a closet or something. And there'll be this weird underlight coming from under. It's like, what is that? Where does that come from? And, like, it's subtle, but if you're looking for it, you'll notice it. If you're not looking for it, what it does is it accomplishes this feeling of like oddness and strangeness, that something is not right in what you're seeing. And this is super effective over the course of a whole movie when like you are looking at characters in the background who look like they might be walking straight at the screen, or others who are just doing their own thing, and your lead is getting increasingly paranoid about this being that is just following them all the time, that they just can never seem to escape or really get away from, which is fascinating, like really interesting. And I don't remember Under the Silver Lake having motivated lighting like this. I need to go back and revisit it because it's really unique, and I don't know. It's so subtle you almost don't notice it. I don't know anybody else doing it in the space. Really good stuff. We should talk about this curse and kind of how that works a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. So as we said, you get the curse by sleeping with someone, and it's funny because this movie was called like the STD ghost for a while. And it's interesting because the only way to get rid of the curse is to then sleep with someone else. So it's kind of subversive of the trope of usually what happens in horror movies is when the horny teens make out and hook up. That's when the killer shows up and murders them for their actions. And in this, it's the opposite, where you have to be promiscuous in order to kind of hope to get rid of it. So it's really kind of playing with these tropes and genres, but we also see the kind of other cast of characters, their feelings and emotions get wrapped in this as well, because there's different people who are interested in Jay romantically and kind of how those motivations play out. We meet some other characters who are more skeptical about the curse. The other thing is that the entity that is following them is invisible to everyone except the cursed. So there's a whole lot of people not really believing and not really seeing, and the people that can see it take different shapes, so you don't really ever know what it is or if it's actually near you.
Yeah, I think the way the rules kind of evolve over the course of the movie makes it really exciting, because you often in a curse movie, like most recently I think a good one we watched was like Talk to Me. It was like a cursed object kind of film, right? You find out a little bit about the thing, or the curse in this case, the thing following her. And then you find out over time how to fight back, how to run from it, and hopefully how to defeat it, right? Like that's usually what your characters are chasing in these features before they run out of some kind of set amount of time, or the curse runs its course and they are dragged to hell, or whatever is to happen, right? This movie gives you an explosive opening of that, because before the first like 16 minutes of it are very understated and very quiet. Not a whole lot happens other than a very creepy opener, which I didn't expect.
Okay. Yeah, great opening.
Great opening. Yeah, really solid. And then our character is functionally kidnapped, tied to a chair, very rapidly told the rules, very quickly shown an example of how the curse works, and then whisked back home and left. It's like horrifying and traumatic. And it's so interesting because so many other movies take their time or slow down, or somebody like explains them. But in this, our character is like immediately tied up and forced to deal with this problem. And it's functionally how the rest of the film goes, right? Like no matter where she goes, this thing will always be pursuing her. She never knows what it'll look like, never knows how it'll arrive. Like nobody else will be able to see it. There's just no good way to deal with this thing. And even if you're hiding at home, like it'll just break a window and stroll in, you know, like it's not a problem. And then once you kind of find out how it works and what it does to its victims, and then you start to get into like the weird parts of the script, right? This is the stuff that feels like it comes from the director of Under the Silver Lake, much like how the curse is contracted. Very odd. Yeah, very easy to joke about, right? Andy said the STD movie. I get it, but it's so much more than that. And it's more than that because of, I think, like the innocence of the idea. It seems like a vulgar idea that this is how this curse would be contracted, but like ultimately it's thoughtful, and I don't know anybody that's done it before. Like, so I think it's kind of a W as far as like good horror curse ideas go. Not to mention the availability of scares when your creature can arrive in any shape. Right, you can kind of go anywhere with that. It could be somebody you know. It could be a complete stranger. It could be somebody tall, somebody short, somebody fat, somebody thin. Like, that stuff's interesting. And, like, it creates a cool dynamic when she gets her friends involved to try to help her who can't see this thing and don't really know if their friend is going crazy or not, right? Like, you get some really cool exchanges with strangers just walking across the frame.
Right. That kind of leads me to the scares. This is a horror movie. I always got to talk about the kind of horror it is and the scares. And it avoids the pitfalls of jump scares. We don't have a lot of, exactly that. Well, and while those are kind of effective, they're also cheap and they get old. In this, we just have this impending sense of dread where, again, we know something is chasing you, but very, very slowly. And so every time you hear a door open or you hear a knock, is it your friend or is it the curse? So there's a whole lot of that dread, a whole lot of having to escape. And yes, while you can outrun this thing, it's eventually going to, you have to eat, you have to sleep, you can't just you can't really just run for it forever. And that's part of the problem, but just this impending sense of dread, and also the realization or the uncertainty when you think, okay, I think that is the cursed thing. Is it really? So it's walking towards me. And there's a number of times where we think it is and it's not, and vice versa. It can be very difficult to tell. So it does really good on the creep factor.
Yeah, I think It Follows manages to instill this sense of kind of dread throughout the whole thing. And for such a simple idea, it's so clever. You might have heard a version of it from the, I think it started on the Rooster Teeth podcast. One of the guys talked about the cursed snail, right? A snail that would follow you everywhere, and eventually it'll get to you, and if it touches you, you die. So what do? Do you get in a plane and cross an ocean? Do you get in a car and drive as far as you can? Doesn't matter where you run, eventually it's going to catch up to you. And in that way, I think It Follows is surprisingly unique. It's oddly like body horror too, because the way to pass on the curse is to basically find a mark and then they tell them and then they have to pass it on, or else it'll come back down to you. You get this weird sense that even if you pass it on, even if you get rid of it, you're never really free of it. Because even if it gets through the next person, the one after that, eventually it follows to you. And that,
it comes
I think,
back up the ladder. Yeah.
Yeah. You'll never really get away from the thing. And that's really interesting. The way our character becomes more vulnerable over the course of the film, and is willing to engage in promiscuity in order to hopefully escape that is creepy and eerie in a way that not a lot of movies manage to land. Yeah, dude, It Follows is really cool and really understated, and I wish I'd heard more about it when it came out.
I also wanted to talk about the score. It has this fantastic synth 80s style score that again, it helps make you unsure of the time period it goes in. Because like I said, the movie looks like an idyllic 80s neighborhood. It has that synth score, but there's also a lot of really modern things as well. But the score is one of the things that I think really helps this movie work.
Yeah, I agree. Score's really unique. I hate to say I'm running out of things to say about it, but Andy, if you've got anything else, I say share away. Now's your moment. Your moment in the sun, not for It Follows. Any other thoughts or recommendations?
My final piece is on our lead actress, Micah Monroe, who carries the whole film, kind of like Caitlin Dever in the other one we watched. She is in every single scene. She is she's the protagonist, final girl, essentially. And she is the victim in a lot of this, and she has to carry the whole film. A lot of the really exciting, scary stuff is happening to her. She's kind of the anchor of the friend group. This was her breakout role, and I'm sad that she hasn't done a whole lot more. She's kind of stayed in the indie space, but she's fabulous in this.
Yeah, I think a unique footnote for It Follows. It doesn't seem like a lot of the people who were engaged with this production are doing anything much larger. And I don't get why. I think this is really clever, and I'm surprised I don't see more people, more talent that was involved with It Follows doing more things, from director to actress. I don't know. I don't know why it didn't take off. Maybe the content was too taboo, or it was too weird. I'm not really sure, but really unique indie feature. Excited to recommend it. Andy, would you recommend It Follows?
Absolutely. One of my favorite horror movies of the last decade and a half. Really changed the face of a lot of modern horror. It's creepy. It's scary. It's original. It's only 100 minutes, so it goes quick. We have good performances from our main cast and crew. And it always creeps me out, but I usually watch it 1 or 2 times a year. Highly recommend.
I think I'm in the same boat. It Follows is neat. Especially perfect for October. Weird and spooky, but not too weird. I think it's a really cool feature, and it came out 2014. Like I said, holds up great. I think it's disarming at the start. It starts off a little hard, and then you're like, okay, this is a pretty soft indie feature, but like just hang on. Like it follows. We'll get there when it does. I think it's totally worth your time. And that's our show. God, episode 229 off script, already behind us. I don't believe it. What are we watching next week, Andy?
So we're taking next week off because there are no big film releases. The big releases, of course, Taylor Swift, the Eras Tour concert film that comes out this Thursday and this weekend, and will continue to play. So I'm sure we'll be talking about it next time we do the show. But we will be back on October 24th covering Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon, the long-awaited epic starring Leonardo DiCaprio, Robert De Niro, and Lily Gladstone, and a host of others. 3.5 hours long. We might just do that one, honestly, but we might also look at something else on streaming. We'll have to see. And later in the month, we're going to be taking a look at Anatomy of a Fall, which is a big Oscar contender that comes out at the end of the month, and also possibly Five Nights at Freddy's, also at the end of the month.
Yeah, long awaited and long runtime. I'm cynical about the 3.5 hour runtime of Killers of the Flower Moon, but it'll be fun. We already got tickets, so we're going. It's happening. I'm excited to talk about it. I will try desperately to convince Andy to watch some other horror feature. We'll see. But yes, next week we're taking a break. Much deserved, I think, for the holiday. But if you enjoyed the show today, if you like what we said about It Follows, maybe you disagree with us, Unknown will save you. Help us see the light, all right? Email us at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com. You can find us at offscriptfilmreview.com, where we post all our media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all the usual social media places you can like, comment, and follow over there. We're on YouTube. Big things happening on the YouTube channel. You got to go check out the YouTube channel when you get a chance. You can leave a comment over there, and of course, subscribe if you're able. And you can follow us on all the usual podcast channels: iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartMedia. Wherever you go, we are there with Off-Script Film Review. Excited to talk about movies. So thanks for listening. If you listen to this one, I really appreciate it. If you listen to any others, I really appreciate it too. We'll be back in just a couple of weeks with an incredible Martin Scorsese epic. Excited to talk about it. And yeah, that's the show. From all of us at Off Script, the home of Bold Cinema, I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.